on the ground, everyone can see where the ship is moving, and I'll have their comments and opinions. So Randall is a fantastic organizer and has a great technical background, and he's kind of come up with some really cool ideas on how we could match this intention and design with blockchain transparency and kind of integrate that into the community. So I will throw that back over to Randall.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Your vibe definitely is soothing for me. I appreciate you. The presentation last week from Tommy was really inspiring to me because so much of it aligned with the way I've been thinking about decentralized management and the structure of perspectives and dreams and objectives that are present in the Catalyst GPS proposed framework really made sense to me. It for me, it arranges a much more stable direction and helps us. I think it's going to help the community reduce the amount of whipping back and forth between different challenges and create more continuity that's really strategic and that is aligned based on not votes for this big tech wall of text that is challenge brief, but to really align on, do we agree that a particular objective is important, or a set of objectives is important? And what would be like the ranking of those objectives? There's a lot to be discovered in like the mechanics of how we choose that. And like Nadia was saying, this is deserving of experimentation. And I was so encouraged last week when three different people from IOG supported this community-led effort to get involved in steering our community. Wow. I'm just stunned. I'm still stunned, and I love it. I have a screen share that would be available, and I've already been granted that permission. Thank you. I just have to be able to select the right window. There are so many. Here we go. All right, that should be coming through for you now. And so what I've set up in this screen is a demonstration of a prototype working on my local machine. It's on its track to a production environment over the coming months through the end of this round that we're deciding how to spend the Catalyst treasury. We are going to be going to a production environment and actually deploying this for Catalyst GPS as our first test bed for consensual governance. And the scope of the proposal, which I hope somebody can paste a link to, is to work together with Catalyst GPS, deploy a version of this platform, and start doing direction setting specifically on goals and objectives. The prototype that we're looking at right now can obviously use some more enhancement in the way of user experience and design. We've actually, based on having funding from Catalyst in Fund 8, we've been able to hire a designer, and she and Adam are working actively together to work on brand and design. And so I'm really grateful for the enhancements to the presentation and user experience that we're going to be able to have. What I'm demoing right here is just one of the organizations that are available in my sandbox. This is constructed as a software as a service platform, And we're going to be deploying just one instance of this platform. But as you can see, we could hit other organizations like the Organization for Done Collectively, DEMU, ADAO, Gimbal Labs. All of these sandbox organizations are ready to switch to, and so there's a different governance scope for each organization. But right now, where we are is in the Catalyst sandbox. And on the front page, you can see a little word cloud of what some of the principles and values that I've seen here in the ecosystem and that we've expressed. On the organizational operating system page, hey, there's the mission, maximizing the potential of human collaboration. And I think I missed adding welcome to the experiment. We'll add that now. We'll say principle. We are experimenting. That's one of our principles. And on the left, you can see all kinds of different work groups and perspectives. Part of the work in the proposal here is to normalize the terminology and mental model between what we haven't done collectively and what the Catalyst GPS team has designed. Rodolfo, not at this time. We're still pre-production. Thanks for the question. You can see perspectives, and there's 5 perspectives in the GPS framework that are recommended. And those are really, I like those because they're really all encompassing products and services, collaboration and engagement, structure and process, infrastructure and ecosystem, and outreach and impact. And then within these categories, there's a lot of flexibility to do things that match that high level perspective. Hey, I like that terminology. Match that high level perspective with particular proposals. But the framework with GPS that was so motivating to me is that it's very objective oriented. Hey, within these categories that don't need to be changing all the time, what do we think is most important? We've been focusing on transparency and auditability, on impact, on viability, and that's part of our evaluation process to date. Within these perspectives, we can also establish more specific goals. So within the outreach and impact goal, we might propose some projects, but not until we've prioritized some goals and objectives, such as helping new proposals have help framing their proposals for funding. This is something I came up with. Or shortening the minimum time for funding projects. Could we get projects through the process in somewhat less than 4 months? Could we improve proposal quality? Could we reduce the time for new community members to feel that they're up to speed? These would be objectives that we could choose to prioritize. These are all in a proposed state, not adopted, not commissioned, not committed, but proposed. And we might include some values that we might use for part of our evaluative process for projects that are proposed. I might pause now for any questions that are coming up.
Well, I could just quickly comment about the user interface. Like, okay, of course, it's work in progress, but it would be cool if it would actually start with that Catalyst map or the GPS map where you have all the objectives when they are ready. So you could just click through that image and then land on this and like drill down on the details.
Yeah, and so I'm harking back to your slide deck where you had columns of the perspectives and goals and objectives within those perspectives, and you're suggesting that a lead-in screen that just puts that front and center would make sense for you, and I like that idea. The main thrust of the proposal is really to create space for experimenting. And so the plan that we've worked up is to provide this space for the GPS team, together with everyone in the community who wants to be part of that experiment in setting objectives and prioritizing objectives, to get involved and have your voice be heard and find momentum together for more than just these big challenge settings. Find momentum together for particular objectives within categories that make sense. And I wonder if Tommy or Nadia or Ander might have a little bit to say about that.
Certainly I can, but maybe Phil, go ahead first with your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question about how you see fitting into a broader ecosystem with this. Do you plan to have open APIs that connect out? How will you engage with other components that people are building?
That's a good question. Yeah, the way I've been building the architecture of this platform is very consistent. It's API based, and so there will be ways for software that's not part of the platform to connect in the platform and find information that is available here in the platform. So it'd be conducive, for example, to connecting up with Darlington's work. And then on the integration side, there's the architecture in the application actually also supports UI plugins, so that there can be code and experiences added to the UI. And we talked a little bit more about this in the proposal text. The roadmap is essentially to enable developers to customize their platform, customize their instance running on Done Collectively, and also to create plugins that can be monetized and delivered to many DAOs on the platform. And that's part of the architecture.
How is the user onboarding? Is it login? How you their profiles? Different? Are you all the same? Is open? How is it?
Yeah, so the authentication is currently based on essentially a little micro wallet, and we generate keys on the devices, and those keys are serve as authentication for user accounts. We're also building, thanks to a Fund 8 proposal, integration to Discord, so that can be a cross-checking device for verifying user accounts and providing continuity between different devices for a particular user. And on our roadmap would be actual wallet sign-in, and of course smart contract integration that would enable.
Something that Randall might not be quite calling out is that a big reason this is impactful is because a lot of non-blockchain organizations work this way as well. They have strategic objectives for the year. And as far as a technical capacity, we are also trying to build the platform as easy to use with as low a barrier to try to draw some of those real world businesses onto the blockchain, including several businesses we're talking to, like charities and social groups. That's something else to mention.
Thanks for that. One of the visions that we have, and we proposed this in our proposal, is to build an evaluative framework. So right now in IdeaScale, we use text and we spend a lot of time thinking, of course, and then we spend a whole lot more time typing, and it combines it combines the whole process into making it more difficult. It makes things more difficult for PAs, and we imagine there being space for the evaluative framework. What we have 15, 20 points in our evaluation framework for Catalyst proposals, and the vision that we had was, well, could we bring more of those points into workflows and make them less about whether a proposal assessor can type and compose really good text to show the way that they're thinking really good. What if they could apply their thinking to what they're seeing on screen and then use more efficient user interfaces to express how they assess things on these multiple facets, like, does it hit this goal well? Does it hit that metric? Does it speak to the dream at the top level? Does it hold to the values that are part of this perspective category? And so the experimentation is going to continue beyond goals and objectives. I keep saying goals and objectives because that's what's on my screen, and we're going to customize that, and the GPS terminology is objective, and we're just going to center on that. And the other thing that I wanted to tell about is the experiment doesn't stop there. We've reserved part of the budget for not things that we've already predicted. We have some guesses, we have some intuitions, we even have some confidence about them, but that's not community-led governance. And so part of our plan is to use these tools that we're developing, working with people in the community, working with you, to find priorities for proposed projects that we will then act on by enhancing the platform and making it fit to what Catalyst actually needs.
Go ahead, Tom.
Any system is as good as its users. So if people don't come in and use the system, it's worthless. So that's why I think the user experience UI is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, have you thought of the mobile experience? Like, how would this look like on the mobile?
I can speak to that. I'm newer to the Done Collectively team, but I've got a pretty extensive background in making web apps for businesses and direct to consumers as well. So the design of this is definitely going to be mobile first. I use almost everything mobile. I rarely use a computer unless I'm building anymore or typing long form. So the design is really important to us. Randall has done a fantastic job of putting the vision out there and a basic framework. All the entities are there, the kind of subtle interactions of how things need to flow are there. But not being a self-proclaimed designer, I think that's why he's trying to bring more people in. So yes, design is super critical. We want to make this user-friendly, easy flowing, and kind of make it feel modern and futuristic a bit at the same time without losing the accessibility that it provides.
And someone was actually talking about starting some sort of a Catalyst design system where we would have like same icons that we could use across different systems. But was it Phil?
I didn't get
Cool
funded,
idea.
though, unfortunately.
Yeah, but let's do it anyways. It's a must.
Sure, but it takes a lot of work to come up with a universal design system. So
Okay, how much do you need? Let's add it in the proposal.
Sure. I'll revisit it again some other time, I think, when things progress, or if someone hasn't done it already.
Yeah, responsive design so that this works as well, maybe not quite as well on a little screen as it does on a big screen, is definitely in scope. I could say more about that, but it would probably bore most of us.
No, that's enough for now. Andre?
The future API integrations, will they expose also the data of the platform? Will it be possible perhaps to query the information about the objectives, about the conversation which are going on?
Yeah, part of the way I designed the APIs is that semantic things like what are the goals and objectives for this particular group, those things are exposed as specific API endpoints. And so you can literally say goals for group, and you give the group ID and it shows you the goals. And similarly, across the platform, anything that shows up in the UI, there are equivalent API endpoints for the semantics that that sit there. So basically anything the UI can do, we'll be able to expose that in API, and probably a few more things that we figure out together in terms of being able to expose the metrics of like how much support was there really for this goal. On the other hand, there are some kinds of things that we would not want to necessarily expose, like who voted for this goal instead of that goal. That's a privacy concern, and we don't have. We recognize that need, and so the framework contains all of the capabilities to filter records, filter details out of records, or add metrics and roll-ups into things where appropriate. Yeah, lots of flexibility in that department.
Thank you, Phil.
I was just following on a question asked in text about open source nature, whether you're releasing it as an open source project or closed source.
Good. Yeah, we have an open source aesthetic, and the issue is that there's actually a whole bunch of code here. The track that we want to follow is to develop the open source release, which is going to be a subset that probably does not include the software as a service infrastructure, but to release that for basically with a cooperative open source license, so that we can encourage remixing and let community do things together and not create competition for our commercial DAO platform. And the funding in this round is focused on really proving out value for the Catalyst ecosystem. And then in future funds, we can certainly look at funding that open source track as well.
Well, maybe follow up on that, because our plan as the GPS team, it is to work together with Randall and the Done Collectively team, make sure that we have some kind of a prototype based on this proposal, which can be used for a test run. So there would be another proposal which would be getting funding for this test run, and this funding would be for running several relatively small proposals which would be submitted not on the standard Catalyst, but it will be submitted through this software. It would be submitted through the GPS framework, and this test run would serve us and the community to evaluate what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be changed. And we would present the results, and there might be next rounds, next iteration, until we figure out what works, what does not work. What I think is good about this is, well, one thing is it enables us to test the GPS. The other thing is, if anyone else would like to test their ideas or their things, I think it opens the possibility that there is some kind of an alternative to run just the GPS. Yeah, sorry, just run the catalyst itself. Okay.
Thanks, Andra. I'm reading from John here. The ideal idea scale replacement. Yeah, I haven't looked at that, but I'll check it out.
It was exciting for me in this. It's always exciting to make a plan and to think about it and to really collaborate on it and think it through. And then there's the reality of actually deploying something and seeing what actually happens. There's a lot of questions still in the GPS. It's like it's a framework, it's a presentation, it's an idea. And without there are fundamental things that need to happen, like the funding categories, the change to having these in a all-encompassing, expectable organization is one piece, so that everything is kept in, nothing is left out, but that people can plan and have some faith that they'll be able to see what's coming. And then that the objectives within that could be discerned based on the immediate needs and the ones that will be serving in short and long term, that those can be decided upon and are adjustable. And that feasibly, one of the ideas that came up is that we could actually adjust the criteria for proposing based on the objectives. That's part of that discussion. Wouldn't that be a lot more realistic and perhaps more accessible for people who don't have a level of knowledge in those areas? Not that that's the total solution for that, but maybe just requiring certain kinds of information is more relevant in some places than others. So the flexibility of that. So that's fundamental to this. That shift needs to be able to happen and be tested. And so this kind of then the tooling allows the space to be able to try these things out. How are objectives going to be chosen? How do groups form? Will they work? Is there an imbalance between things? Is there what didn't we check for? What can we test that we can't test in the idea scale environment? All of that opportunity in each of these three groups. One of the things we found as we discussed is that there's no duplicated work really in what each of these groups is doing, including George in that because of all of his depth of work in funding categories. And then done collectively team in this GPS idea. There's a good amount of cohesion because each of these things can serve the next. And also what would happen as the outcome then is we really could see if these things that we're longing for in a community space or that we're apprehensive about could actually find their way to have life breathed into them and to be tested out, and what could be added to this additionally, what other things could come to this from other teams. So that's exciting for me because otherwise, we've talked a lot over the past funds of the same problems recurring and not being able to get out of certain traps just based on the limitations of the systems that we have. So I think that's all very exciting. And certainly though, this is a big test environment. So there's a lot to learn and still a lot of blanks to fill in, which is, I think, why we're here mostly. So yeah, so that's from my perspective. And I'd be interested to just hear people's impressions and what questions are there and to have this picked apart a little bit, things that maybe we're not seeing that we should be, complications one might anticipate, that kind of stuff. Or opportunities maybe we haven't even thought of yet.
Go idea scale, go. Go idea scale, go. Go idea scale, go. Please go.
You can make it. Come on, let's go.
So brutal right now.
It's hard. It's finding it difficult to handle the thousands of proposals. Yeah.
It's a good demonstration of need, real time.
Yeah, totally.
Can you say full table scan? Sorry, that's a propeller head joke. Thanks for that link. what was exciting to me about the presentation last week was, wow, these guys are really thinking about improving things, but we could make this more than an idea. We could actually make it happen in a pretty short time frame.
Yeah, 6 months sounds like ages.
It feels like a long time even. But it's great to have a head start.
Plus, the idea is to go in iterations, really. So we'll learn from every iteration, break things, do things badly. So I believe it might take longer to get the production environment than 6 months even. But I think it's really good that we will be able to see it relatively quickly in operation and see what works, what doesn't work. Because I think personally, since I'm involved in GPS, I love it. I think it's amazing and it offers a lot of opportunities. But there are a lot of risks and things which need to be handled. Things like what to do with people who don't know what want to be aligned. Things like how to make sure that we do not create an environment where there are just experts and new people cannot come in. There is a lot of compromises to be done, and I think have this environment to test it is absolutely great.
If you guys needed help, where would you? Where do you guys think you need the most help? In what areas?
It would be nice to have a mobile optimized open source voting app.
I think we can do that for you probably.
I think it would be great to have a voting framework that was on chain but privacy preserving.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to do. That's a whole another beast.
Let's get together and talk more about that.
We can. When I think we're putting a proposal in for 9, we're going to open source the stuff we did for drip drops. Adam's going to do that. And yeah, I'm happy to have those conversations. We talk about it quite frequently, and they're good conversations. And what I found is the more people you put in the room when you have those conversations, you actually drive the solutions a lot better. But yeah, the privacy part's hard. That's why, hence, Catalyst, if you want fully auditable, then it's hard, right? Then you get really hard. Like we can't even fully audit our own votes in Catalyst. So but we have the privacy, right? So it's yeah, we don't need to get drill into that here, but I just wanted to ask if there's anything distinctly that you guys need a lot of help with or whatever.
Collaboration on good workflows to iterate on where we're at and to get more continuity. Like the collaboration is the real win here that's available in my mind. And sorry, I've got distracted with a DM here. I have no idea what you mean, Tommy.
No,
yeah,
there is. We had 2 proposals there. So can you delete the old one? It's called moving elsewhere or something.
Yes. Okay, I got you now. Thanks. I can't delete it, but I can delete its content. So that's what I'll do.
You can.
The other thing.
Now you can. Now there is a delete button now.
Oh, thank you for that update.
Don't delete, but put a tag that is deleted.
All right, super. I'll find that briefly here.
But yeah, Kyle, there might be other options also. Like this just came to my mind right now because I've been thinking about it for a long time, that this ADA-centric voting works for many things, like for example, proposals, but maybe there's other things that should be voted on in governance where it doesn't make sense to grant more voting power for someone who has more ADA. So maybe there should be like a voting token for that reason. And it could be like equally given to all the members of Catalyst community at the first of every month, and they could be 10,000 of them, and then if you don't use them, they would just disappear.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can have this conversation in detail because I know I know the next phase of what we're implementing actually entails issuing of tokens to a degree, but there's different applications because I mean, we're looking at like voting with native assets and things like that too, right? So you can set your parameters differently. You know, you can vote on, I mean, I guess it's essentially snapshot based, right? Whatever happens is snapshot based. You know, I would presume unless there's another way to do it. But let's say whenever you do the snapshot, there's a time element. So you choose the epoch term when you do the snapshot, but what's in the snapshot and what references voting power is really what's up, you know, the variables and the knobs we turn. So like you've got so like one knob would be like kind of maybe if you want to snapshot just what's we're familiar with, you know, just standard ADA voting power, right? Like based on quantity of number of assets, or you could do it on number of native assets specifically, or you could do single power for anybody that holds a certain asset, any amount, right? Or you could segment it out based on curves or, you know, any type of discrete math. But what I'm getting at is you can figure out your parameters. And so, you know, for deploying apps that are useful, I mean, it's you've also got the transaction aspect to deal with too, you know. So ideally, I think this should happen kind of layer 2 more than layer 1 because it's faster and you're going to be able to obfuscate stuff. But it's that middle piece of how you tie it together to tie privacy and match it with not only, you know, cheap to no cost, but also, you know, you accomplish all the other primary objectives. You know, primary privacy is critical, but you want that, the transparency, the full auditability, that's everything. And so, yeah, they're more technical discussions, but yeah, if Quinn's in the room, he'd probably be able to hash some stuff out here now, but let's definitely chat, you know.
When I was distracted about that DM, the thing that was on mind was that we are designing a protocol for essentially a voting protocol. And the idea there is that a Cardano wallet or any other wallet and a set of voting mechanisms, or more than one set of voting mechanisms, can live behind a basic interface that meets this essential pattern of people being organized in groups and making proposals and like proposing protocol parameters, proposing goals and objectives, and all these various details that are, I think, fundamental, even more so than the very low level thing. Oh, we're making a DAO. Oh, you need groups, we'll make a sub DAO. That really disconnects everything. And like the voting protocol that we're thinking about is to like establish a plugin framework where different voting protocols, different token weighting mechanisms can live easily, and then whichever instance on our platform wants to use whichever kind of protocol can just plug into that and use that token voting protocol.
Yeah,
so that'd be a place where we can.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have chat, but we got to be careful too because we are, you know, Drip Drops is entering voting as a service as a competitor in that space. So I'm happy to talk, but we've got to be somewhat careful in that element. And then our strategy is we'll go ahead and innovate on the front end and mitigate the risk on the voting side and deploy commercially, and then come back and work to open source that technology as we've deployed it. And that's some of the stuff we're working to do now. You'll see, I think it's already public. We've got one proposal to do that. But, you know, as far as ideas, we're happy to share that stuff. I do know voting as a service is going to be competitive. we look forward to seeing products from a number of prominent entities in the space. So it'll be interesting, but there's definitely room and a necessity. Absolutely
Nice.
necessity for commercial projects who need it. So, I mean, if you have any questions or, I mean, we're pretty open with how we accomplish stuff and we share information across the teams technically. So if there's anything that you come up, you guys get stuck on something, shoot it over. And we may have been there.
Awesome.
Have to help.
Yeah, some sort of overlap and competition is always welcome to make sure that we have quality products and the bad ones die out. But what I would like to see happening more and more is that we start finding those like niche areas where certain teams specialize in, and then how we bring all this together. Like, for example,
Absolutely. I have no problem like discussing and exploring. I just wanted to set, you set expectations early. That's all. Just
like
clear working in the space.
What Ro was suggesting, that there should be like these different third-party solutions put together. Like, I would like to see different Catalyst created, community created solutions put together.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to explore that and help where we can. But like I said, there's a commercial side to what we do. We've got nearly 20 people that we're paying for, so we've got it's bear market. And
Wow.
well, yeah, it's a big team, and across the teams, we've got to eat what we kill or eat only what we kill. Sometimes the Catalyst is, it helps provide that, but that's how we're looking at it. We're looking at it from, commercial viability long term and that kind of aspect. And it's not just voting as a service. There's a lot of other areas we're engaged in. So, there's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. There's a lot of ambassador type opportunities because, I mean, you're right in the sense that we are one community, and we do need to figure out how to best optimize what everybody's working on. And I don't know the answer to that, because we all have our teams, and we all kind of, we do our own thing, and we very rarely interface in a manner where we can collaborate really productively, like cross channel. So, I mean, maybe we set up a meeting to do that, and specifically for that or something, and we push for that. Now, it's hard to commit to, but I think we can do that. It's we're working like 18-hour days nonstop. We don't get breaks. And then we get shoved to a conference, and we all get COVID. It's so stupid. Everybody got sick who went to that, didn't they? Nobody said anything. No, but
I didn't get sick.
You liar.
I swear to God.
You liar.
I didn't.
Bullshit.
I see Joe's on the call, so happy to see you. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts.
He's lying, isn't he?
Or maybe he brought it.
Oh, Peter, I'll respond to your DM, by the way. I've not been well, and I've been slammed.
No worries, man. I just drink water, take my vitamin D,
Yeah, Carl, when did you start thinking about doing voting as a service? This is news to me. Is this like something recent that you guys have pushing? I know obviously you did the vote on drip drops not that long ago.
We got a lot of stuff we're working on. Yeah, we've made that. Adam, if you look at like what, I'm not sure who recently released some voting spec. It may have been IOG for Voltaire. They essentially used the voting spec that Adam did for Spockra way back in. First on-chain vote was Spockra we did for like SPOs back when. So I mean, it's kind of been in our back pocket. And it's a passion for Adam. So Adam's been on the Drip Drops team since the beginning. So that's just something that he's really solid and it's like if you know Adam, like he's known for NFTs. He's probably possibly I think the majority of NFT volume on Cardano. I know him and Patrick together probably do like 75%, but his passion is in on-chain voting. So we've kind of been aligning for that, and for us, we move in development sprints, and so we'll do product planning and figure out what's coming after the current sprint that we're on or thereafter, and pipe it in. And voting, we had to get voting out for just operational stuff. You know, we did a really strategic vote for within the community, not only just to clear some things we needed to do operationally, but you know, it's also a good push for consumption, or excuse me, utility. And but as far as monetizing it, it was just, it's interesting. Like the decision to actually productize it probably came maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, but we'd had conversations with other entities about partnering, and you know, so we were disclosing that we were definitely working on it, but the decision to productize came like as we were probably rolling the boat. We knew we were going to productize it, but it's weird how that team works. That team's an anomaly. They can get together and put stuff into motion and have it into production. I mean, probably remarkably fast. I mean, I think that was maybe a 2.5 week rolled out on our end, but it was based on stuff Adam had been working on for a really long time, and thinking about for a really long time. And I think that's where the real value is that, you know, the people have been thinking about these problems for a while. But yeah, voting it's big, and there's a lot of opportunity there. But you know, we're focused on that is definitely an area, but our primary focus really is going to be on driving adoption. You know, mainstream kind of consumer applications, going after traditional Web 2.0 revenue. Yeah, in that regard. So the voting as a service, you know, we're just in a unique position to position it because we've got a decent, you know, distribution platform. So it just makes sense to compete there. Cool. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. One of the things I've been thinking about is if I can get this contributors model across the line, and a model that would work well for them is not maybe the on-chain stuff, but obviously using Ortala on-chain that side, using SSI credentials. That if the contributors, whether it's Catalyst, Cardano, or those community contributors, if they could be issued a credential and almost be the body themselves, the issuers, they could then, you know, do voting via that kind of credential. That is something that I'm super interested in spending time on once eventually I can get the model across the line, that we can need to hire people as well as just fund proposals. So I mean, I'll reach out and get some. We'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah. I'm happy to help. You know, it's hard. It's really hard getting everything together because you don't just need the product. The market has to be the right fit, the right time, and sometimes it can be 3 or 6 months off, and then you just kind of linger for a little while, and then you catch your set, I guess. But they're going to be hard, and that's, you know, we're looking at stuff in that scope too. But it's the issuing authority that's a little weird. You guys have an advantage being in Catalyst, you know, because that could potentially be something that's viewed as an authority to some degree somewhere, right? And so there's an angle, but it's weird because it's just like the chicken and the egg. That's the problem, the challenge there. It's like, who do you trust to issue the identifier? You know, like if it was Amazon or somebody, or Facebook breaks into the space, then, you know, okay, now, and that's another angle. We're gonna probably deal with that too. Once he's
it's too true. The timing on everything, like I've dipped my hands in quite a few things in Catalyst, and the timing that you do anything is super important to actually trying to get something across the line. Timing's almost is the key thing.
Well, it's really hard now too. We're in a bear market, so people are weird. Data's cheap, but you don't want to spend money when it's cheap. Customers don't, so it's harder for projects to launch, I think. So I mean, we're very blessed to have a treasury that can help kind of fill those gaps for you know, making it the revenue. I mean, for me, that's the most important thing. It's just the talent that we bring in, make sure that they can stay focused on Cardano and not have to go work somewhere else. Because that's, I mean, we're competing globally. So But
Sorry for derailing Tommy and Nadia until Randall had to go. I did have some things to mention on the goals and objectives part. And I think this is an interesting thing of the differences between having goals and objectives internally, such as let's say we're a Catalyst working team, and the goals and objectives you'd apply if it's the ecosystem wide. I think this is where obviously I spent a bit of time on the reasons why it's so good to have the goals and objectives separate from the funding categorization. Is when it's external and it's with funding categorization, there is a never-ending amount of different perspectives, cultures, and people with different goals and objectives. And it's generally much harder for you then to be to say, this subset of the community is the only thing that's important. And that is kind of the problem we have with when we attach it to funding categorization, is there's a finite amount of resources, and you're saying, oh, we have to pick. We don't want to see the proposals for this because we have to pick. So as the ecosystem grows, because it's an external kind of funding categorization approach, we'd expect to see that grow. And we really don't want to exclude the minorities and the smaller goals and objectives there, because like anything, those could be the ones where there's a gem, there's a proposal that comes in that's aiming to solve the goal and objective that is very niche. But when you see it, it's like, you actually solved a really problem that we didn't think was even important. Fantastic. But now if you compare that with an internal approach, you're inside Catalyst, you're working on proposal assessment. Okay, how do you improve that process? Well, in those instances, when you're working as a team, you want to be very specific on the things you're working on. You have roadmaps, you have sprint planning, you're trying to focus on a very small subset. You don't want an ever expanding kind of, you're not trying to be inclusive of every kind of idea. You have to be very selective. Your approach to how you group those things is very different. So I think this is the key thing that I've obviously been thinking about when I've been looking at GPS and obviously my work on funding categories is how we approach goals and objectives, but like how we're working together and collaboratively is a bit different than how we're trying to handle it in the context of funding categorization and trying to this massive global Catalyst ecosystem that needs to be super flexible to very fast changing things, different kind of proposals coming in, all of that. So that's the food for thought kind of area that I think we need to think about as we go on.
I'll just quickly comment on that. So let's take an example that we had, say, 20 objectives that were proposed by the community, and they were ranked in a certain order based on whatever voting power, and then those would be adopted for the next 6 months or whatever. And then there was some guy who was left out with the Cardano for plumbers objective. And Nadia is like, yay, another Tommy example. Yeah, so Cardano for plumbers in his mind was an amazing objective, but it didn't get enough support or whatever, and it was left out of these objectives. So of course he could just wait and see if the timing was better in another 3 months time or whatever, or he could just scratch that and say, okay, I'm going to propose Cardano for plumbers anyway. I have a proposal for that. I don't need other people to propose for that. And they could say, okay, Cardano for plumbers would be for outreach category or whatever. And they would propose there, and they would justify that, okay, this and this and this reason, this should be funded, and it's not hitting any of the objectives that are recommended by the community, but I don't care about your objectives right now because this is an awesome solution, and here's the reasoning. So if the PAs would be like, okay, there's a point, this is outside of the objectives where most of the proposals would probably go, but this guy has a point, so it might get funded. So I don't know, it doesn't really exclude, does it?
Yeah, that's the key thing, is like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, people should be able to propose basically anything. And it also doesn't necessarily even have to attach to some goal objectives that someone has already defined. It's just like, because you don't know what's going to come up. It's hard to predict ahead of time whether that's kind of like the whole point of innovation, because it kind of usually comes from minority and spreads. So to say, oh no, we're only going to trust the majority there. It's important that people can, share an idea basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been in the MISC challenge myself, and with Phil and Vanessa, and the value that the MISC challenge has is that, or in this case, the plumber example would be that, oh, that plumber guy actually got funded, and maybe there is something to this, like maybe we could have it as an objective later. So the same way in the MISC challenge, you get some wacky ideas, and some of them are really good, and then later you've created a challenge out of it. But we don't really want to have that challenge-based funding anymore, do we?
I think the goals and objectives will become in a separate process. That's a problem with funding categories at the moment, is we don't have a system for separate goal and objective setting. The importance of this ranking, would be both important on an internal basis, where you're going to have to kind of maybe cut off and say we're going to focus on these 4, but on a kind of funding categorization basis, when you use it, it's important that you have some feedback mechanism to get that community consensus, because at the end of the day, there will be things that are more priority than others, and that's absolutely fine. And that can be baked in and influenced into, let's say, some voting infrastructure. So the ones that, the community consensus has, these are the most high priority. Well, you might get shown first in the sorting algorithm, but it doesn't mean, at least the other ones are still included. They're not excluded in any way, but you can see the things that the community thinks is most important, and you're going to see those proposals first. Obviously, it could also include things like quality thresholds, things like that, but everything else is included.
Well, the way I see it is I'm not sure, this is specific, this is enabling other projects too, right? It's not just Catalyst specific. And I see the greatest opportunity to learn is like blowing up like projects, by bad decisions, right? And I mean that in the most extreme case. I mean, we're going to learn in watching native assets and implementing governance solutions there. So, the way I see it is, roll out an MVP that can maybe service a project, even on the Adoja front, we're already having discussions of how we're going to do dispute resolutions for, between a 3D printer operator and a user who didn't get what he thought he wanted. Or then, you've got malicious people on the back end. But long story short, you've got people who are going to have to work and interface with the treasury to be compensated in a governance model. So there's governance models that are going to be required by these decentralized apps that are coming to market. So if you guys design a product, start engaging with those and saying, okay, can we work with you? A, that potential revenue stream right there that you potentially drive from it. But B, what it really does is then you get the nuances of, okay, we have MVP, but here's what we build next in the next cycle. And that can be your next proposal cycle, right? If it's an internal tool, and if an external tool, you're running on revenue, you've got a successful business. But yeah, it's good. Like, I'm just saying, don't let scope creep stop you from launching. That's the message. Well, get the MVP and you can go and start and engage projects and then learn what they need.
Yeah, that's definitely our perspective and style, by the way. Just like MVP, get feedback from people, find out what's working. And honestly, the thing that I love about this approach, and I think George said this best in a call yesterday, this is like, everybody struggles with this. Everybody, every business, every organization, like, this is something that as we move towards more democratic structures, we need to find a way to bubble up people's voices and establish strategic direction. And so we do see a lot of use for this with other organizations, but Catalyst, I think, is probably a really great first user.
Oh yeah, and I don't disagree. I'm just saying there's projects that are moving a lot faster, and they're gonna, if you have a tool in it. I just saw the demo had a bunch of different project lists on there. Maybe those. I might have been confused with something else.
No, you're right. This type of feature would definitely be available for them as well, and to get their feedback and growth. So yes, we're in agreement.
No worries. Yeah, I see what you guys are doing.
In Catalyst, when we will be setting the categories or the objectives, and people will be trying to get funded for a certain objective, we need to make sure that the people are motivated to align themselves to the objectives which are there and get aligned to what was created before. So there is some kind of continuity, and at the same time that there is this freedom to go and do objectives which are outside of the scope of which was prescribed. So because in any case, we need to solve this issue, how to be able to standardize and therefore be more effective as a community. And on the other hand, how we will achieve the ability to innovate and do whatever task or goal we need to do. and there might be a lot of people all around the world which have ideas nobody else has thought about. So this needs to still be open. In the same time, if you don't create an environment where people would see what other are doing and wouldn't have the opportunity to align themselves to that, you are missing the opportunity to get more effective and more efficiently use your resources, because whatever the number of people, the number of resources will be always somewhat limited.
How experimental could we be? Where do you think the breaking point is? This is like for the group, because clearly one of the things we talked about is that in order for this test area to work, we need to definitely have the full, like all the perspectives or funding categories in place. So that has to happen. It can't be some kind of hybrid. But could we hybridize selection of objectives? Do some in one funding category, some in another? Like, what are some of the different ways we could test these different things? There's so many things we can test here. We could test the fluidity of the funding. What are some of the things that this group feels like we should be looking at and trying out? Go ahead, Phil.
I'm interested to understand how, like, without IOG's input into this, how do we get this rolling? How do we get this in action, and how do we make it happen? So,
well, if it's enough momentum, you scream loud enough. You can make stuff
yeah.
happen. You got to get a lot of people screaming.
What if never there is a momentum?
Sorry, what's that?
No, what if it's never it's a momentum? So I'm have the same question as Phil. So when that's going to happen and how?
Well, first we got to define exactly what you're trying to do, so it can be a vision clearly presented to everybody, and then that's how you build momentum. But I still kind of am figuring out what you guys are trying to accomplish. I mean, okay, I get the concept of a tool where we can gather and garnish ideas, but what ideas are we trying to convey? What are the big problems that you guys are seeing?
Well, I'm more for, instead of trying to steer the entire catalyst process in one particular direction, that we try to break off pieces of the catalyst so that the catalyst operates in a more distributed way. So instead of saying, yeah, we need categorization in Catalyst to be able to run the Catalyst, we say the GPS vision of Catalyst runs in this way and operates under these parameters, these tools, this set, and let the community decide where they want to exist.
What are the bureaucratic obstacles?
Well, the IOG has the keys to the treasury. That's the main issue, and therefore they are the ones that make the choices.
Okay, we should probably have a more broader discussion about this, because I don't disagree that we should have a discussion on who holds the keys and for protocol parameter updates and things like that. We should probably revisit that as a community, because things have changed a lot since the inception.
But I also think we have a situation where we already can solve this without asking for permission or discussing it in more detail.
I like that more.
Yeah, totally. Me too. So the solution that I've been putting forward for a long time is that we put forward a chunky proposal, not a challenge setting, an actual funded proposal for $1 million, let's say, to run the GPS structure, or at least a smaller amount to set it up ready to run. So the problem is that in order to get it to that point, you kind of need DAO structures in place, but we don't,
yeah, you're not gonna be able to go get $1 million out of Catalyst right now. I get that. You almost kind of gotta do
not necessarily, but you can create, but I was going to do it this fund, but we'll see what happens in the future. But I'd like to start to see more of these side treasuries asking for a larger sum to one, set themselves up, and two, to allow new ways to explore the proposal mechanisms.
Okay.
Catalyst has a way, right? Like it's idea scale, it's IOG. Okay, let that keep rolling. There's no need to just rip that to pieces at the moment. We don't have an alternative. But what we do need is we need to be building alternatives, multiple, not just one. Because if we look to just say, okay, we're gonna replace the entire Catalyst with this new improved version of Catalyst, well, then we're going to end up in the same problem in a few months.
You know what? That's actually a really decent ideas. I see what you're saying. You're almost kind of like saying, okay, I want to do a micro treasury and an experiment with it.
Yeah. Side treasuries, I'm calling them, but yeah, and they might turn into the full treasury at some point when and if.
No, yeah. If you experiment with different models, I understand the premise of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to experiment. So,
well, yes, and partially, but we have a treasury to manage too, and there's an outside world and chaos happening there too. And at the end of the day, we also have to win. So we're doing two things. We're fighting on one front, but we're experimenting. You see, the rocket's running. You know, it's not like it's still.
But already we've set the precedent of a shotgun approach, right? We load the shotgun with a bunch of proposals. We shoot them into the community, and some get funded.
No, I get what you're saying there. The point I'm making is that there's a commercial world happening and that we still need to leverage treasury resources to compete there. So we can't put everything into experimenting and not enough into bullets. So our best bet is to experiment with our bullets. That's my philosophy in a lot of ways. So does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And some bullets are bigger than others, let's say. But
yeah, that's the point. Yeah, some of them don't do, some of them fart out, and oh, that didn't work. But that's the experimentation versus like, all I'm saying is with the treasury, with the micro treasury, let's just make sure when we say objectives that we have it maybe outcomes or something to consider too in parallel, or maybe they're not the same thing. Yeah, that's all.
And if we do this type of thing, we can have treasuries that are looking to fund massive projects that may be many people, many years of development, but also other side treasuries that look to fund 6-month projects or 1-month projects that are just teeny things that people find interesting and want to work on that will add value in some smaller way.
We'll see. One of the things that's important too, and it scares me, is like a dojo. Like it's built into the model. It's gonna have a treasury. It's everything that happens. There's a cut that's going into a treasury, and it's a centralized company now, but it has to be decentralized and managed in the future. If the model goes wrong, it blows up. Everything screws up. Right? It's done. And so that type of information, if we can replicate these types of treasuries that native asset programs can manage, their treasuries are going to be formidable funding solutions that are different from Catalyst itself. And we may be talking about a totally different branch of an idea here from what you're doing now. So this isn't discredit what you're working on. I think we're onto something a little bit new. And that's let's not forget Cardano is going to have its own alt season. All the native assets are going to go through some crazy ass alt season, just like Ethereum did. And then all these projects that are established, they're going to have their own treasuries. And so you see what I'm saying? If those management structures aren't in place, we could have all kinds of chaos going on. But if we have the right management structures, at least aligning it, we could at least kind of direct those bullets.
We want some chaos and we want some order. That's the reality of the situation. Because like I've been telling people, inside the chaos, that's where the innovation comes. Inside the order, that's where the efficiencies come.
Right, but you can increase your chances of success. Like, I think we're on the same page.
Sure.
I think this is a little bit of the point and the hope for this, that we put something together that actually works. We get all these different components in place. We can look at them, and then we can add into it funding, maybe in future funds, that we can actually really test that this works. I
see. Yeah, you guys are looking at it from like implementing it within Catalyst and failing and blowing up here. And I'm like, hey, let's go ahead and run and let some other projects blow up out there. It's not Cardano, it's a native.
Yeah, that's cool too. There's a super immediate need for it here. And there's a real, like the pain points are so visceral in here. We've been talking about them a long time. I think we understand them. There's different groups who have really thought through these different components. And now we all have this perspective of how, okay, this could work this way. We don't really know what things need filling in, but there's all different kinds of things that need filling in here. The governance needs filling in, the tooling needs filling, all these things need to really, the machine, the gears have to turn a little bit, and then we can, you know, put more meat into it as we get that funding. And maybe that's a future thing, but we haven't demonstrated that we can do it. We have ideas here, they're not demonstrated. So if they can get put into use, and then in the beginning, one of the things we talked about, even if we had 10 grand or 5 grand, like something nominal, it doesn't even matter, that you can actually test the whole thing out, and then you put more into it. The people who test in the beginning are going to be interested in whether this thing actually, whether these philosophies and these ideas actually work, whether the actual mechanisms work. And then from there you could add to it, and then you could add to it. So you know, that actually, you guys get it. Yeah. So we actually see if it actually works. And that demonstration, then we will know. Right now we're saying, we think, you know, we add these funding categories, it's more inclusive. That's not someone's natural perception. The sense of freedom of proposing whatever challenge setting that you see is valuable is so open-ended and beautiful, and also really like precarious, which is the actual experience. So we if we can demonstrate and we can say, hey, this actually did happen, and here's this, then there's a greater capacity for both onboarding and interest and additional testing from, you know, broader.
This is the key thing of challenge setting. Holistically, it sounds fantastic. Yeah, like, this is what I want to happen. Here's the budget. Here's the, like, that is what I want. But in practice, that having that choice is then impacts what choices are available for who can submit proposals. So it's like every system has a set of choices, and, you know, things like when Facebook introduced timeline, there was uproar that they changed the system. There's always going to be someone who's like, oh, you know, they're used to something. It's like, oh, don't change it. But there's reasons that, you know, to change things. It's like that choice has a cost, and that cost is, yeah, excluding like key areas that we've had, you know, development, ecosystem, and governance, and different areas in each fund that have just been completely excluded. I'm very scared that something will happen this fund as well. Like, you know, this round, it's like, it's a reason why it's very hard to scale challenge things right now. It's just like, you need to have some continuity. And obviously last week, I know we talked about the hybrid solution. I think Harris mentioned that. But that obviously, the problem with that is it continues to keep a lot of the complexities that you can just remove. All of the kind of treasury experiments and all of those kind of things fit onto a very scalable, simple base, and that is the whole kind of concept of minimizing the complexity in funding categorization. It's like you can have all of those, any single proposal, any kind of idea, anything can go into that. Is kind of like the whole point. So all of these ideas could come through that and then expand and become like, okay, now we're going to actually replace, we're going to change how we do funding categorization because there's been some test that has replaced it. But the thing I think we need to solve really quickly is to find a way that's kind of stable, gives access to all of the kind of right areas, makes it competitive. That's a super important thing. We need to have it competitive. Explores other models like the contribute model. How can we actually pass over ownership and authority to the community in some way to actually deburden IOG? If you can get those things done as quickly as possible, like you're moving much more in line in a tandem, just chugging along. There's everything going on. There's more tests. There's more this. There's more that. That is kind of at the moment completely my priority. Is if just those base things. I don't really mind too much how people work with each other. That's not a decision I need to solve. I don't really mind what treasuries and things people test on. That's not a problem I need to solve. It's just how can we enable those things. That's the key thing that needs to be solved. And then you just ramp up that learning process. The learning speed we're going through right now is just not fast enough.
So IOG's got two problems. One, they wear all the risk of this platform. So if it fails, we can all just wander off, right? But IOG's going, like, it's their baby. If it has a major issue because of something that they did, it's on them, right? That's one of the reasons why it's taking so long, I think, to actually work through and pass things to the community. The second thing is when changes that we want to see get offered, like this categorization thing, well, first, there's unforeseen consequences of doing this. And second, who makes the decision? At the moment, we don't have any structures in place to vote on that this is a thing. So it's either IOG goes ahead and implements it, or we run some minor sort of and this hasn't even happened except for maybe for the CC Circle stuff, that we run some sort of low turnout vote that gets a very, very small percentage of the population. So this is the challenge, that if we sit, like, everything that we've ever proposed either just sort of takes a long time and then just slips out there, or gets the nods but doesn't get the actions. So we need to essentially, in order to change the direction, do something differently, because it doesn't work. So
the comparison is, if, let's say, Facebook, when they made that timeline change, and the only way they were going to do it is if they had to have every user accept that was going to be the change, and they asked when the community going to vote in that context. And that's kind of how slow, you know, it would be to kind of get that across the line. I know at the moment it's not ideal on that. If IOG are the ones who make the decision, at the moment that it seems to be that, you know, is going to be the approach. It's like that plus whatever consensus they, you know, are happy with in terms of community adoption. It's an unfortunate current situation, but at least it then moves us towards the next kind of step of just like having a way to pass some kind of well, the funding categories don't, but things like the contributor model does. Like that's actually kind of what got me into the funding categories thing. It's like, how can we have a recurring, repeatable way to start to pass over and deburden IOG in some capacity, like responsibility. Like, you do the documentation, you do this, we go to you for that. Like, they need to have a way to do that as soon as possible, because they're not going to be able to expand to be able to cater for all of the growing catalyst things. That is actually, you know, that was the catalyst itself for funding categories. Like, it has to be recurring. It can't just be on and off, on and off, on and off. It has to be continuous. It has to be like, we have to have some sort of base of people who are working to support this ever growing and changing and expanding ecosystem, and they can work however they want to, but there needs to be a system that, you know, you can't expect people to work for free and all that kind of thing. That doesn't work. Those are the flaws we learned from Catalyst Earth and stuff. So it needs to be recurring, it needs to be paid. You need to have a diversity of skill sets. You need the developers, you need the coordination, you need that. Once you have those mixture of skills, well, you have a sturdy base in which to start deburdening and kind of, you know, doing all these tests, these working tests, all of that.
I would like to reiterate what Kyle mentioned. The moment you make it decentralized, that's it. That's it. Nothing else matters after that. Because if you set up the wrong system and put wrong people in there, then it goes sideways. So I think that's what is making it really scary for IOG or for anyone who kind of has some kind of control. And what is great about Catalyst at this moment is that everything can be tried, right? You can get funding for any kind of proposal. So I think that is the interesting thing. And whatever we decide to do, we need to be able to know that there is some kind of a fail-safe mechanism. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate.
Hey, and that still applies to, you know, whatever model, whether it's Catalyst Circle, Catalyst Contributors, whatever model. Like, at the moment, IOG haven't passed over parameters, keys, this, that, or the other, and nor will they. And that will be one of the last things they do. It'll always be a build-up phase. It'll be, you know, it'll be the simplest things, the documentation. Like, maybe you host these meetings, you do these things, and you give them, and they learn those processes in whatever is a continuous, recurring, compensated way to do that. You build that up, and as that becomes more mature, that's when, you know, you can increase the risk profile, you can do the processes, and this is you all of these stages. You're doing experimentation, you're not just trying one thing. You're saying, here's the options, here's the ways to do those things.
I'm thinking something similar, something like invest a little part of the budget into something else, into something just a standard catalyst. Let's say start with 1%, right, or 2%, and let it mature and learn from its mistakes, and have some fail-safe mechanism which will tell you, okay, if this does not work, we cancel it and we will start over, something like that.
Yeah, well, it runs out of funding, right? And then it either comes back and gets more funding, or it dies on the tree, right? The interesting thing about like the idea of Catalyst is it is the test bed of Voltaire. So the reason why we're all here is to work out how Voltaire will work, because Voltaire is going to be the governance of Cardano, whereas we're in this little space of the governance of the treasury, right? It's an interesting space. There's money there available to do things. But the idea that we're all here is to work out how Voltaire will operate. And Voltaire is probably not going to be solved, just like I said we shouldn't be trying to solve Catalyst last week. We're not here to solve the problem. We're here to work and continually iterate and develop and create improvements. But once we solve it, it ends. So we don't want to solve it. We want to make it better all the time, making it better. So I think that's the cool thing about what you guys are working on GPS, is that it's putting out there the structures based on existing structures that are already used and implemented well, and looking at how we can bring them into this space. But it still is only a solution. We're not trying to solve the thing. So it might become a very popular wing of the Catalyst, and I'm here to support that. But I'm also here to make sure that someone else who comes up with a different framework can still operate that. And they might come 10, 20, 100 years down the track. We don't want to set it up to be the thing and then that's it. It doesn't get to move anywhere else.
Yeah, that already came through last week, that it has to be inbuilt into the system, how you can change it and how you can evolve it. I think what's going to tip the scales in our favor, and when I say our, I mean Catalyst community, is that we need to show IOG that things can be done very easily from their side, because right now they are so burdened with nitty-gritty details and it doesn't make a lot of sense always. So that's why I'm in love with the funding categories idea from George, that you could basically have these recurring broad categories where basically IOG just tops up the money every 3 months and that's it. And then lets the community figure out how that's going to be handed out. So that would be like the ideal scenario. But to show any of that, we need to show some proof in the pudding. So that's why we need to build a small pudding factory.
Another one of the Tommyisms, is it?
Probably some like connecting the plumber to the pudding factory.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not writing these. They just come out of my mouth.
Yeah, that's even more disturbing, actually. I was just going to say that to Kyle's early question, the voting piece is something. Participation is going to be a big thing in the beginning. Like if we have a sandbox for people to come play in and we can put this together, we need a variety of people, right? And people who are really, and the ability to convey what's being practiced and thought about, and the ability to refine that so we don't have too many different things going on that we can't really learn from what's happening. But the people is the most important part. You said that at the beginning, Tommy, that we need to think about that. So that's an area where building a community within this small play area as a beginning is going to be a piece, and then thinking about how to bring people to it so we don't have just a collection of people of one kind, like people who are only interested in outreach and impact or only interested in systems, right? There needs to be distribution of I guess interest might be the way to say it, but enough in there that we can actually see it work. I guess there's always the benefit of learning from something that doesn't work, but that's something that I think we can plan for ahead of time and really consider at the same way that we're considering the tooling itself and the processes and all that.
To continue on Phil's thing, I think I'll reiterate and say it in funny practice, it is never a final solution, things I'm suggesting, although I think it's an absolute massive improvement of challenge settings by absolute leaps and bounds. It is absolutely not something I'm suggesting is the solution. It is just, I'm just looking at how can I make sure that, there's always progress going on in each of the areas. How can we start learning about new things? I mean, I think budget weighting is more important than attaching goals and objectives to funding calculation, being able to actually have this kind of conversations about how that works and can it be automated? Like, this is the thing, if we have all these demands, like demand side, which is the goals, objectives, that kind of thing, and you have all the data about supply side, how they're actually getting used, well, there's ways that we can actually think about automating all of that. That could be the next improvement. The thing with voting and the things that we put in place for that is that every single minute you add for the person that needs to vote, the more centralized it becomes, because you're increasing the effort for them to participate. So making that efficient where it can be is really important, and it is a system design thing that is very costly to you know, to be like, oh yeah, you know, it's fine if they spend an hour doing this. Like, it doesn't matter that it's, you know, because that you will see the cost of that very quickly, and you can actually obviously do just apply some simple math to be like, what's their, you know, what's their worth time wise, and you multiply that out. That's how expensive it is to get to 10 million users to participate. There is obviously the experiment side, but there's also this, like, you know, how do we analyze it? How do we get that? And then sometimes there will be actually, in some cases, like pluralism, that it should be like 3 different solutions because there is no better way. It's ideology based. And in some instances, there could actually just be a best solution. And obviously you'll still be trying new things, but sometimes there'll be like a best solution for maybe 5 years where it's just not been beat, whether it's an algorithm or this or that. That can happen. And I think obviously both ends of the spectrum can exist and happen. And I expect that same thing to happen for different parts of Catalyst. Maybe the categorization changes twice and it becomes this form that's like, it's very hard to beat it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it staying stagnant. It's mainly like, does it work? Is it, what are the properties we're analyzing it against, and why is it fantastic? If we can't say that with any certainty, then you should obviously completely be constantly testing it and experimenting, and what haven't we tried? Why are we wrong? And I think that's, you know, that's the same with any kind of tech company, is you're always trying to prove yourself wrong. How do we get, you know, that 99% to 100% to 101%? How do we get that 1% improvement?
Have you actually thought about how IOG is going to make this a thing? Have they, I mean, you've been talking to them a bit about it. Right?
I mean, Daniel's here and he's aware. Just spam them and send them emails and hope for the best, as well as push it to the community. I mean, I'm doing anything I can. There's no process. It's just, you know, I'm going to continue making documentation. For me, it's the most important thing right now because it impacts everything else I'd like to work on. So I'm going to continue. I've got more analysis I can do.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, I don't have an answer, unfortunately, just because there is no perfect answer for how to move things along in Catalyst right now. There's a willingness, of course. It's just the exacts aren't there yet.
There's a lot of working parts for everyone, and more so for IOG, I think. And
I'm happy for them to just put my name on it and be like, if it goes wrong, just blame me. Like just for the sake of change. I just want to try something new. Like, I know challenge.
So that we know your name's George Lovejoy.
Yeah, like if anything goes wrong, here's his email, here's where he lives.
Yeah,
like, you know, I don't think I could hack. I mean, I could barely hack the Katana community on Twitter if they weren't against me. There's a strong community on there. But you know, if it meant we tried something new for a funding round, I'll take it. You know, it's got to be done. I'll take one for the team.
Yeah, earlier I mentioned that I'm a huge fan of what George has been doing, but of course he's not a prophet and he is wrong in some parts, and he just doesn't realize it yet, although I keep pointing it out to him. Like this contributors part, I don't really understand, because you can have contributors in all of the categories. And the same way, the nurturing ideas and teams, I don't understand, because you can have the MISC part in all of the other categories.
Yeah, the key difference there is like, it's a statement that I'm happy to take on responsibility for supporting, let's say, Catalyst contributors, the Catalyst contributors ecosystem, and I want to spend most of my time there. And it's a role with some level of delegated authority. That is a key kind of part of it. It's because at the moment IOG doesn't have a recurring way to do that, where people are paid, it solves that problem. That is needed. Whereas it simplifies the process a lot. Because if I'm just like a dev or a design or this or that, at the moment, the way that I have to participate in Catalyst is I've got to think of an idea or join this existing team. And Catalyst is basically going to be one of those teams. I just want to work in Catalyst. And I know I haven't proposed it yet, but I've been mentioned to a few people. And Charles actually mentioned this in a chat recently, but this community contributors idea. I need to do the analysis on it. But you know, I'm a designer and I just want to work in the community. I just want to be paid by the protocol, but I'm going to help. You know, I'm going to go into Maladex, talk to Mel, talk to these. You know, there's these 3. They've said that they could do some help here. I'm going to go and help them, and I'm paid by the protocol. No, you know, I don't have to join a team. The incentive then there is very different. I'm just paid to contribute and provide value. Like, I don't have to it's less competitive. It becomes like a collaborative glue. So I think the contribute model is really, really important. It's a different, whereas ideas and proposals is much more competitive. It's like my idea, like I need to get my, if I'm funded, this is my project, this is what I'm doing. Whereas if I'm just paid my skill set, it's like, well, you know, I just, all I have to do is prove that I'm valuable and provide, you know, make as much impact as I can. And for a community contributor, that could be many things. It could mean doing a bit of solo research. It could be mixing between a mixture of groups. It could be helping moderate 10 different groups. It's like that the flexibility is really important, I think, because then people do exactly what they want to. And when you do what you want to, you're going to provide the most value. That is a really key thing. So I think the contribute model, I think, is essential. Like there's lots of complexity hidden in there. For instance, how the community votes on who, you know, who's going to be Catalyst contributors and all that kind of thing is hard to scale to a global audience. It will be a subset. I don't know how to solve that problem at the moment, but you know, that's going to, you know, something else we have to you know, learn and solve over time. I can't solve every problem for sure, but there's very good reasons why a contributor model has some simplicities and beauties to it in how it can incentivize that collaboration, the glue, the, you know, the maneuverability. Very different than me joining Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know,
yeah, so we 100% agree on that, and we just see I see the full-time contributors. Part of them can be a team that coordinates a certain category, for example, and part of them can be these individual contributors who just work on something. Maybe they are trainers, maybe they are consultants, maybe they are developers, whatnot. But maybe they should also focus and not just do everything. And maybe they have their special talent. So maybe they can say that, okay, I am going to work for the next 1 year in the area of people and culture, or collaboration and engagement, or leadership, or whatever you want to call that part. And then the same way, someone can say, I want to work on structure and processes. I want to work on the blockchain part of it. I want to work on the products and services. I want to work on the outreach and impact. So it is there. And we just need to figure out, should it be like changing funding, or should it be like 1% of every fund should go to these people, or whatever?
I was interested to hear what Carl's thoughts on Catalyst contributors are, but he stepped out. So wait till he comes back. But
I'm here, guys. Sorry, I'm doing other stuff in parallel.
Have you ever heard that people want to work like specifically on Catalyst and work on adding value in that space? And what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, I think we need to separate the front office from the back office. I don't think CAs, people reviewing proposals, should be submitting proposals. I think we need to clean that up first. There's processes we need in place. Mark Stock, he's a hard guy to get to know, but once you get past his brief, he's a really brilliant guy. He's got a lot of ideas on processes. And so I think that's the first thing that needs to be put in place, are processes. I think, honestly, this idea of paying individuals to come and work for the protocol it's amazing, because I mean, it's really what I essentially tried to do within the framework we had: find talent, keep them employed long enough to where they could find, you know, commercial viability and sustainability, and that's very important. You know, people coming to the ecosystem, the talent coming from the outside needs time to find their footing, I guess. You know, it's hard to do. And so I don't think it should be Catalyst specific in that regard. So I think people can come and work on whatever, you know, that's not Catalyst community specific, but I do believe that there are people who need to be supported by the Treasury who work here full time in that regard. But we've got to figure out how those individuals are compensated. And like I said, I believe we need to separate the front office from the back office in that regard. It's just we're young and small now, but as we grow, it just opens us up for problems I think we could solve if we could mitigate by architecting better. But there's smarter people who know more about that than me. I talk to a lot of people. So
it's kind of the same thing as that. It's just a DAO, really. It's just whether it's Cardano is the biggest DAO you can get, then whether it's drip drops, it's kind of its own, what it can become a DAO, and then how you're going to fund yourself. Ideally, if it's a protocol and what you've made is generating revenue, is you're paying yourself from that, and mechanisms you've created is those decisions of how it gets distributed. Same kind of concept with Catalyst and Cardano is you have people that are needed to help run it. At the moment, it's funded by a company that's in Singapore, or whatever RHK is, and that deals with it. But we'd like to move to the protocol.
We have to get there. The back office or whatever is driving and managing the governance of Cardano should be paid. You guys should be compensated. You shouldn't have to worry about where the hell you're going to get your money from. So that's what I mean by separate the front office and the back office. Like the operational side of this shit shouldn't be having to submit proposals to maintain the operational side of it. We should, if we're doing 20% towards the governance side of it, that should be what it is, and to figure out how that is, and because then you just get weird interests that are crossing. Now even this, even the categories that are putting up are probably influenced by special interests or whatnot. I'm just totally presuming from a game theory perspective, not an accusatory perspective, right? Just by how it's architected, even how the incentives are done. I mean, CA, there's game theory sprinkled into the proposal incentives. Like that shouldn't have to exist if the back office was structured appropriately, right? So I think there's some applications we should apply towards running a business, but for now, like, the spirit of experimenting, we don't want to screw that up either. So maybe this more professional entity needs to emerge from this while still allowing for that, because messing up now is the best thing we can do. Screwing up now and learning now is the best thing we can do. I'd rather blow and piss away money learning now than 5 or 6 years from now when it really matters. And there's lessons we can get now. So. I mean, yeah, I think people who show up to Cardano every day and who are actually contributing deserve to be paid. There's a lot of money there. We need to take care of everybody. But the big argument in every government is how do you spend it the best way?
Like both Catalyst and Cardano need people who are working for the protocol that are very, very highly skilled. So like those roles could be very well paid. I know at the moment what I've kind of added in as the guidance in the budget ranges at the moment are based on this a bit of research that makes sense for now, but it is nowhere near what it could be. It could quite easily be kind of Facebook, top level kind of salaries. If you've got a cohort of people that are like working on some of the most important things within Catalyst or Cardano, well, it's like you want to have the brightest minds there. Like it's a case of who has the best talent is going to make the best stuff.
Well, it's hard because even the most money, like the guy, like take Andrew Westbrook, for example. Andrew, brilliant dude. He left a really high-paying job for Walmart Labs to come and build full time. So even money isn't interesting to him in that regard. The thrill is building and being on the edge and doing new things and things like that. So, but you're right, to attract that. So I think the guys on the edge building are going to be really hard to pull into the governance side, just for that, just because there's so much shit on the edge that's just too fun. But there's a lot of talent that is coming to Cardano. Like we picked up a couple SpaceX engineers. They're on the Doja team now, and they came in. Jita had no clue what he was doing. He was trying to make NFT chicken wings, and it was crazy. But they show up, and they see the mission and the vision, and that there needs to we want to have a place for everybody who wants to participate. And I think that's the challenge. Is right now the entry point to Catalyst is be a CA, and that's it. And that's what it is. It's the work we have available today, but it's also an interesting funnel point. We need different funnel points for different types of individuals to come and participate. I think that'll get better as more and more projects come to fruition and they get bigger and stronger, bigger budgets under them.
It is a key kind of difference that we have with kind of the Web 2 side and Web 3 side is there's more choice in not just kind of the skill sets you want to apply, but it's also how deep do you want to be part of the governance and kind of responsibility and accountability. So let's say, Catalyst contributors, you're really meant to be looking after the catalyst system and processes. So that kind of cohort is given a lot of responsibility and kind of accountability to do things properly. And it's like, no, that's not for everyone, because you're instead of IG getting the shit, now you're going to get the shit. And that's a reason why it needs to be paid well, because you're going to start dealing with the shit. And there's some people who just would rather, they love working Catalyst, but they just want to be a full-time contributor, but they don't want to necessarily have to deal with the governance side, like the politics, because there will be politics. I mean, you can already see it. There's
it's already yeah. Like, it's not like it was a year ago.
It's unavoidable. So it's like who wants to get there's different people are interested in different things. People have got different tolerances for different things. And that's a key thing that we need to provide for, is like make it easy so people can work full time just as a dev. But I just I just want to make this thing, and that's it. I just like this tech.
Even another suggestion, just to say, I don't get the opportunity to come to town halls a lot, but even sitting through it, there was a good 45 minutes I've seen before. And so maybe we do a parallel, like Catalyst boot camp Zoom, like once a month or something for all the newbies. Some people can come up to speed, and I don't know, I'm sure you guys have heard these suggestions before, but it's just I really liked seeing the projects present. That was cool, seeing what everybody was doing real quick. It's good to update their closeouts. That was good. But the rest of it was almost kind of like, okay, maybe there's new sprinkle stuff in there, but I think that it was almost like it was a town halls geared just towards the Catalyst community and not the greater Cardano community.
Maybe they can split it so that there's like a bit half an hour before where it's introduction to Catalyst sort of stuff, and then moves on or something. But
something where you get the fluff out of the way for the veterans, where it's like, okay, because it makes people not want to come back for 3 months.
I fully agree. There's just separate those out into separate places. So it's like you just on Tuesdays we just go through the facts of the things.
You don't want separate places, guys, because the idea is that you want the mixing. You don't want the veterans not being there when the newbies come. So
you have to accommodate that. The veterans aren't even in the room. I pulled in I pulled in 5 or 6. I mean, the Catalyst veterans are guys, but there's a lot of guys that don't. They
no, that's true. But each has their own interest and their own focus, I guess, right? That's how it works.
The key.
I just wanted to address what you said before, that you'd rather not see the people who are working on the Catalyst making proposals, but there's evidence to say that the best people to be making the proposals are the people that are working on things, right? So like in some factory manufacturing places, when they put in a suggestion box for the workers, because they're the ones on the ground, they're the ones.
We could argue this all day anecdotally. I think this is a fight that we need to have with data, just raw data at the right time.
Okay.
Like this, this is, I get it. We could debate this all day. I think that it needs to be separate. I don't disagree with you. It is early. I think everybody who shows up should find a way to keep being able to give to the mission. And there's different ways to do that. So maybe we can, I think this should be like a more structured type debate, where we prepare for it.
There's no reason why.
Yeah, it's a passionate debate.
All right.
You have full optionality. Like, for instance, if you became a contributor in any capacity, Catalyst, Cardano, community, it's just a general one. If you after 3 months say, actually, I found a team that I really want to work for full time, or I want to do this proposal, you should just be able to cancel and say, yeah, stop. I don't want to be contributing more. Now I'm being paid for this. You being able to move around, I think is really important. Maybe there's different, if you're becoming a Catalyst contributor, maybe there's a different, like if you're saying I'm taking on responsibility, maybe it's a different like offloading clause. So it's kind of like, you do want to at least replace you or something like that if you've got responsibilities. But in most instances, you just want to offer flexibility. It's like, people should just be able to, because it's like, how do we make it the easiest possible way for like a Web 2 person just to come in and get engaged in Cardano, and becoming just like paid to do something is a super nice way to do that. And then let's say they were the designer that walked around and helped people. You've then just met loads of people, and then you get closer to knowing exactly what you want to do. And that's just very attractive, because you've just had the capacity to be full time, just to spend the time, because it takes time to meet everyone. Like, I've only talked to Kyle on Telegram, I think, a few times. I've not managed to talk to Kyle, and I've seen Kyle for ages. Like, you don't get to meet everyone. It takes time to kind of find everyone. But having the capacity to do that, to then find your next step is a very kind of a sexy concept.
That's really the key. It really is. I mean, that's how we had a different form when I first showed up. It was a stake pool Telegram channel, right? And so we were trying to figure out how to get the nodes up for testnet and all that stuff. But it was those collaborative environments where you meet people that you can trust. And the bear markets, honestly, is where you meet people with integrity, because you're here when the price is in the shithole. And that tells you a lot about the people you're dealing with right away. But you're going to forge relationships with people. And then when the time comes, I mean, that's what happened with drip drops. We just approached the right people who I'd already had a lot of rapport with, building, just kind of like doing what you guys are doing now. You're engaging and you're talking and you have video conversations over time. And then the team was formed, but it was the right talent where we didn't need the funding. We put it together in about 6 weeks, and there it was. And it was just boom, time, market, product fit, and execution. And that's what I mean by, like, as far as bear market, meeting team members who can build. And, funding it's important, but honestly, I don't think we wouldn't have been able to do it without the stake pool revenue, because a lot of the guys on the team were guys who had showed up and got some stake pool revenue, and it gave them the ability to be able to work for a few months without having, to worry about the income. And so that's the hardest part, and maybe like even too, I thought about, like, there's some junior guys that are showing up that are really smart. And by junior, I just mean junior to Cardano. They're by no means junior to their technical capabilities whatsoever. Very advanced senior guys. Maybe we can create incentive programs that pay them like a 5K or whatever, depending on geographical appropriateness, right? Stipend a month. But part of their requirement is to pair them up with a veteran CA and help them review and assess stuff from a technical perspective, so we can actually get some good, assessments coming into place as far as just a better structure, but only in a micro category, maybe just for dApps and integration or something like that, where it makes sense. But the whole idea, it doesn't matter how we do it. The idea is you could put people to work for the community and require that in exchange to give them an opportunity to find commercial viability in the community.
The DREP might sort of be able to help with some of that, I think. If some DREPs who come and hold themselves to be experts and can prove that in the space, I think they can create that voter block that can help. So it needs work, obviously, but I think it can iterate that way, or partly in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, there was some early work back in the early funds about having expert ballots. This was the concept of people sharing their voting methodologies based on their expertise. They didn't really take off that much because they were hard to find and distribute.
Everybody's an expert, right?
Okay, guys, I think it's time to wrap up and finish the recording, and then whoever wants to stay can stay. I actually want to go and check the other room also, because there's a bunch of people there. I don't know why. Must be interesting. So Nadia and Andre, do you have any last words and next steps?
Always thanks for coming, everyone. It's a really good discussion. We'll put the recording up. I guess we can just connect with each other for these next conversations. A few good things came up, the voting. The proposal is there for comments, so any that you come up with afterwards would be very helpful as we come to the deadline here.
I actually just saw that Nin also entered. Hi, Nin.
Hey, guys.
They have a lot of stuff already ready, so it's a kind of a different approach to things. So maybe we could benchmark what Snapbrilla is doing. But
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to put you on the spot.
Awesome. I'm all in. Let's go.
Let's do it.
So yeah, I think that's good. And maybe we can just stop the recording, come to like close unless there's any last comments, and then check and continue as you'd like.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you for showing up.